Now then, this isn't our basement.
No, well spotted, Bax. This is in fact, of course, Newburgh Street, round the back of Carnaby Street, and we're off to meet a fella who happens to be standing over there chatting, who's celebrating his 40th year in this wonderful district. Of course, this is Clobbered, and don't forget, please do follow us on YouTube and subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Mr Powell.
I say you did it.
This is Clobbered, Mark Webster, Mark Baxter, Mark Powell, and of course, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's for free.
It's free.
And we welcome you on board. And him over here, Mr 21st Century, you tell some brilliant little stories. That's like you've got this Instagram thing going, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it just became a big thing because it's 40 years. I mean, the other thing is it's sort of quite annoying, this modern world with Soho, how you've got these people that have been around 5 minutes and they're like, as if they're like the Soho people that they hang out at a bar Italia or whatever. I'm not going to all that, but you know that world. And that's because of the modern world of social media. But the good thing is, if you've got real history to tell of your experience, people love to hear that.
Yes.
Because, you know, people just see me now. I mean, even the girls from Annie's down the road, you know, a very cool shop down the road, it has fabulous clothes for the girls and stuff. They said, "Wow, Mark, your history's brilliant," you know, because they don't know. They know you're older, but they don't know.
Well,
people like to hear history, don't
Exactly.
Touching on that history, why Soho? Why was so important?
Well, I mean, I think no one knows when you start your journey, but I think pretty quickly on I realised it was the perfect place for me, being more of a maverick.
Why Archer Street? Just it was cheap rent? Or?
No. How I started on Archer Street, simply, I used to work in Robot in Florida Street. I already was interested in getting my own shop, but I still hadn't gone about getting it together. There used to be a guy who used to come in the shop, spend quite a lot of money. I got talking, and he said, I actually own a few cinemas around the West End. Turned out he was a porn baron.
Right.
And he owned my shop. He just had it. It was one of the Maltese guys had given him the shop. He was a bit of a chap, obviously, the guy.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my first shop. It was £200 a week.
Right.
And that's how I started on Archer Street. And then, stupid, along the line, I did get a bit involved with everything with the landlord and stuff. But that's another story.
You felt at home in Soho? You felt at home?
Yeah, I felt at home in Soho. I'd already been working in Soho.
Yeah.
I worked for a women's shop, actually, called Strawberry Studio on Old Compton Street. When it was, you know, the sex cinema was over the road. It was 66. I worked there from about 20 to 21, before I worked at Robot.
Right.
Right.
But it's a big leap to say, I love working up Soho and the commute's not too bad from where I live, blah, blah, blah. It's another story entirely to suddenly just plant yourself here. Was that a big decision for you to take?
No, not really at all. I felt really comfortable here. I mean, the first day I opened the shop, they'd had a bomb left in one of their clubs, my landlord, and they was all coming and saying, everything all right, Mark? We just had a little bit of a problem around the corner. Well, I just felt very at home with it. It was almost like living in a fantasy, because I'd already read all the gangster books. Because the other thing is that Soho was a bit like that still.
Yes.
You know, and
what year would that be then?
It's only mid-80s.
Exactly.
And then the only one that was genuine was my landlord. And he got even more out of his debt for himself along the line, but that's another story.
Leave it.
There's lots of other good stories to go with this. When you opened the shop, did you have a clear idea of what you knew you could do or wanted to do?
Well, I'd already found this warehouse full of original 30s, 40s and 50s clothing and 60s stuff. So I built a look around that. I mean, I think I had a couple of grand. I went to the place in Stoke Newington, and he had a couple of tailors, Mr Sidney Goldberg, where they used to have a lot of sort of more 60s mod obvious stuff. But when I went to the warehouse, it had all CC41, original 40s stuff, all with the labels on. He was just keeping it for
utility stuff, utility clothing.
Yeah, utility clothing, utility stuff.
Wow.
But then he had a lot of easy, amazing 60s stuff, you know, with a V at the bottom of the tray, with a cover button, little half belt on the back with the buttons. And lovely dinner suits. He had doeskin jackets. I remember Bobby Helms coming in and buying stuff because they all loved it. But we built a look around that.
Yes.
But obviously, it was only a supply that was going to last so long.
Yeah.
But it was a great way to start the business. So that jazz poster that became quite iconic with Jeff Browning. Remember the one with jazz?
Yes.
It became a bit like a Fina poster. Right?
Totally. Yeah.
But that was all Mark Powell. Powell and Co stuff in that picture.
Is
the original 40s stuff.
The idea of pulling back the curtain and finding an Aladdin's cave.
Yeah.
I think it happened in the record business a lot. You hear a lot about blokes finding 50 Roy Ayers rare albums and stuff like that.
Sure.
Do you think that's sort of dried up now, or do you think there might be still some whole places?
Still places around. I mean, there was nothing new. I wasn't doing nothing new there. There was a lot of guys in the 70s when they started Acme Attractions, and even Lloyd Johnson used to do it, going to America and finding. So people have always done that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you do find new old stuff, it is very special. And a supply of it.
Especially it's like fresh old stuff.
Fresh old stuff. I mean, there was the odd morphole, but not many.
No.
Because there was obviously, even then, they were over 30 years old a lot.
Yeah.
And then, some amazing things then connected up. So, a movie was being made called Absolute Beginners, which although historically is laughed at a bit, visually it looks very good.
Totally,
It was sadly too much money thrown at it, and then it became a big video promo because Julian Temple directed it. The rest is history, and that was Goldcrest really. I think because it was being sold to sell in America, they got all these pop stars in like Bowie and Sade, and I think that killed it. If it had been a low budget Channel 4 movie, because the book's a marvellous book.
I think that's what everyone thought that we're going to get our story told, and it never happened.
That was going to be the one,
So anyway, I supplied a load of clothes for the film. Chris was involved with the film. Chris Sullivan, who's a dear friend of mine. So Chris got Roger Burton, who was doing contemporary wardrobe, was doing the wardrobe. So I ended up doing a lot of suits for that. But the suits that became the iconic suits from the film, that are in Contemporary Wardrobe's book of their most amazing wardrobe, they weren't the original ones, and they were suits that I designed. It was a gold shark skin suit. I'll show you it in a minute.
Wow.
Gold shark skin suit I had made when I was about 18, 19, which is very modernist, 1958, 59. And then this amazing Prince of Wales neo-Edwardian suit that I had made.
Brilliant.
So they become the two suits that were and they weren't originals, they were mine. And he deluded himself that they were original, but they weren't. They were Mark Powell suits I'd had made a fucking DNA.
You mentioned in the first part of our conversation, in part one of this, that you're not conventional in the West End Savile Row sense as a tailor.
No.
Did you find that people were coming to you, that what you were starting to do is going, okay, I'm going to give them an experience now, because they're kind of buying into the whole process? Was that a big part of it?
Well, the made-to-measure and bespoke side of the business was there from the beginning, but it was a smaller part, especially the made-to-measure was a smaller part of the business.
Right.
And it wasn't, I think I've talked about that in my, when I'm documenting my stuff, it was really more towards the end of Archer Street. And then when I didn't have a shop and I didn't have the nightclub, I thought, well, what am I going to do? So people started ringing me about having things made up. It was more a sense of trying to make a living, doing what I was doing. And I used to go to Fred's and meet them in Fred's and, measure them up, get them to choose a fabric, and then turn up a few weeks later with a fitting and then finish the suit a week or so later. So that was that beginning of the Mark Powell tailor thing, really.
So a lot of word of mouth, really.
Really, in those days, word of mouth was very powerful as well, especially with tailoring. But then it really boomed from the early 90s when I moved to Darblay Street, because in that era you would be featured in GQ, Esquire, Arena, when they were very credible magazines. My favourite one was Arena magazine, when they did a thing on me. The first paragraph was, when Mark Powell walks through the street, it's like, I remember the royal family on a family walkabout. Can only cross the street or turn a corner without shaking an street stand or returning a respectful face. And that was in 1992.
I love it. We talk about you being sort of like a living, breathing part of it, surely. I remember distinctly, and I think it was above what is now the Red Wing shop here on Newburgh Street.
That was Newburgh.
And I remember, I think I saw you in there, and you were measuring up a couple for their wedding suits. And they had someone taking all the pictures, and I thought, this is going in their wedding album. So this is what I mean about you becoming part of the experience, in the way that a great hairdresser might be a great hairdresser, but if you're kind of a bit showbiz with your hairdresser, you become the bigger hairdresser.
Well, look, every other week, a couple will come in and say, you made my wedding suit 25 years ago, and they come in all smiling, the couple, if they're still together, obviously. Still together. And it's a nice thing. They say, I had a lad come in the other week, he's 21, I was altering his dad's suit for him.
Oh, brilliant.
You might have seen that on social media. Suit I made for him in 1999. But I have couples coming all the time. So I have become part of that story.
I say, because your personality, your character's become a biggest part of the tailoring, really, in another way, because people love you, don't they?
Well, that's what should become the thing, because you're a personality, aren't you?
Definitely,
And in a way, that's the great story, when you have always had the great personality tailored, whether it be Tommy Nutter, Edward Sexton, Gordon Millings or you know whatever, or even you know Dougie Hayward. You know, they were more personalities, but they also a bit like me. They were mavericks, individual thinking.
Just outside,
and that's why they have a tailoring look.
Yeah.
Cyril Castle was another one.
Yeah,
there was, and I'm interested in this in the broader sense because, of course, you've experienced it for that many decades now. There was famously that era, was it back in like the new collective thing that was happening, which people like Tim Everest
and
yourself.
Yeah, it was a new tailoring movement, which was me, Richard James, Timothy Edwards, Oswald Boateng. That was the sort of four.
Was that right? Did they get that right?
It was right. There was a new movement, and then the great thing with me, I felt really good with that because I was the first one. I was around before any of them. Although a lot of them started to do very well, but I mean, I was always a bit reckless anyway. They'd have a group interview, and I might not even turn up for the Japanese magazine interview, and they became, "Where's Mark?" And I got me bored because there was always these group things on us. That was more from about '94,
right?
But then, like when they did an exhibition at the V&A, the London Cut, it was me, Timothy Everest, Richard James, and Oswald.
Yes.
So by then, that was the thing. I mean, John Pearce and that was always around, but they were never always part of the group. The main group were those four guys at that time.
Was that age related?
A lot of it was age related, but then I've got pictures of magazines with the group thing, and Oswald was a mate of mine. I mean, I used to pick him up from his house in Wood Green. You know, the story of Oswald is a very reinvented story. Not so much by Oswald, but by the people around him. But, you know, what an amazing guy, what an amazing self-promoter. And, you know, he's done incredibly well. He's still got a very impressive shop on Savile Row where people can be negative, but look, he's done incredibly well.
No, he is, and he's still there.
He got an OBE, he got a gong very early on, didn't he? He got an OBE. Well, funny enough, they all had, apart from me. Richard James got an.
It's because you didn't turn up.
Timothy Everest got an OB, and they've all got them. They've all got them. I didn't get one. But I'm quite proud of that. I think I'd probably done like a Bowie or
Would you accept it? Would you accept it?
I think I'd have been like Paul and Bowie and knocked on
his. Yeah.
Well, perhaps
there'd been a bit of a hypocrisy on my side to take it.
Perhaps we'll find out. Perhaps we're yet to find out.
I'll start a campaign, won't we?
We'll talk about. I'd like to talk about, because obviously, see you sitting here now like this, like for example, immediately I know that shirt as yours.
Yeah.
As the years have gone by, as the decades have gone by, have you assembled what could be seen to be 20, 30 obvious Mark Powell looking things, would you reckon?
Oh yeah, there's definitely, I mean, I think even with my suits that are seen out there, the shoulder line of the suits, you know, people do know my look.
Yeah.
Most of the time, and a lot of the classic Mark Powell suits always normally had a waistcoat. There was often 3 piece. As I've got older, I've got less out of the cliche of looking like Mark Powell, if you know what I mean. Because
ironically,
we've done that.
Because you had all that geezer thing happening, and I couldn't bear that.
No.
So when that loaded thing happened, that's when I got into doing a lot of women's tailoring.
Oh,
to
right.
show that I was a lot more creative and outside of that
makes sense.
geezer box. And when that loaded, dodgy gangster film Guy Ritchie thing happened, and you invented gangster shit, I thought, this is embarrassing. I don't want to get pigeonholed in that, but they still do to a point.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a joke, because I mean, you know, people say.
I've got to show you, by the way, as well. He mentioned artistry earlier on there, and we talked about signature looks. You may recognise this.
Wow, that's
that has never left my side.
That's a piece.
And that's with the stud clip.
Pardon the collar.
Yeah.
It's the round collar with the stud,
club,
which I loved wearing. No tie, done up
that's why
with
like
jeans.
That. There's a great picture of Mick Jagger wearing that look in the 60s, just with the club collar.
With pride.
But yeah.
But that's one of your. I mean, again, over the years, have you fought against having a stereotype version of you?
I think I've been lucky because I've never become that commercially successful. I think if I'd have become like a George Armani or Richard James or even Oswald, they were far bigger commercially than me. But I didn't want to be that, really, did I?
No.
I don't think so. I sort of toyed with the idea of it. And because of that, I've always been able to reinvent and redefine my look.
Yeah,
but it's still Mark Powell.
Yes.
That's the beauty of it. I still update it and modernise it. Because a lot of these guys now, their looks, without mentioning the name, look a bit dated. Those guys that are Richard James or Timothy Everest, a lot of they haven't moved on, you know.
Yeah. And if you're chasing the prize, you're often going to be always behind it.
And I think it's hard though if you do become like that. I mean, you know, I think it's easier for someone like Paul Smith because he's more like a proper brand, and he can always have his younger look and everything else.
Is there anyone in that world, like say Paul Smith, are they inspirations? Are they people like, maybe go back further than Paul Smith, anyone particularly an inspiration to you as not only a tailor but a sort of a stylish sort of.
I mean, it's a lot of amazing, stylish people, but no one really from the modern times that I would.
There's no one really.
No one inspired me at all, really.
Like Tommy Roberts, I always think of Tommy Roberts. You know?
Tommy Roberts, yeah.
I know different society never will, but
obviously, you know, some of them were creatively amazing people. I mean, Tommy Roberts was incredible, and I like the whole thing of him being pals with.
And he kept changing as well. Yeah, he kept.
But it was that 70s period when there was a lot of license to change quickly. I mean, things changed very quickly in the 70s in the end.
Yeah.
You know, or from the late 60s into the 70s. But yeah, there's some of those guys are amazing. But I think with me, when I read that, I relate more to not John Seaman but to Vince.
Yeah. You
know, because they're the first to pioneer a look and a style, and they evolved from that. And I relate to someone that's not commercially
in
successful.
some ways, the ones that come after get more the press and the accolade, don't they?
Well, they always do.
You know,
the pioneer kicks down the door.
The first one through the door, don't know what.
The ones that have ripped off things that I've done.
What's your day? What's your week? What's your months like?
Well, I've come a little bit. For me, it's not quite how I liked it. I'm a little too much trapped in the shop at the moment, which, you know, it's quite interesting because I'm running up to June, which is, well, will be exactly the 40 years. But I've also got an option to break out of the lease on the shop.
Right.
So I'm having that thing at the moment of how am I going to change how it is. I'm not done it yet. I've talked about doing it, but I still don't know yet what I'm going to do. But I don't really like the idea of being trapped solely in a shop for another few years. These are prime years. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to get back my next 7 or 8 or 10 years working.
No.
Because I will work, but I want to do it more on my own terms. So I need to step back a bit.
You go to sunnier climes for a lot of work now, don't you?
I go to, my son lives in Dubai, and that's been quite inspiring. I definitely think there's a very good market in the whole Middle East generally for what I do.
Yeah.
And I think they'd embrace someone like me good as well.
Yes.
And I'm looking at that possibly, basically starting with Dubai, but then of course you've got Abu Dhabi that's just down an hour away, you've got Qatar, and you've got Riyadh in Saudi. These areas are now becoming, well, you only see it with sport, with showbiz.
Sure.
So it's sort of just becoming part of that idea of that would be good for someone like me who is more of a maverick and showbiz and a place to you know, make a good market for myself. And it is more that challenge, and of course, you know, the argument is, oh, you're old, you ain't got the same energy. But I still am quite enthusiastic, and I've got a lot of energy. In fact, there was a thing the other day with dear old Jeff Banks, and he was saying, I don't know where he gets his energy from. So, I mean, that's a good thing when someone like Jeff Banks is saying that, because he's a pretty amazing
well, we had to take the espresso out your end, obviously, a little bit earlier on as well. Are you kind of have tape measure, will travel? Because that's kind of basically where you started in the first place, isn't it?
The good thing is as well, I can make, not bespoke, but made to measure be the thing. Because that's become a bigger growth part of my business, because I've got some amazing styles. I've got a very good factory I work with now. And that makes it really easy to do. And I can do made to measure business. I can then email them through to the factory, and then they send them in 6 weeks made, and they're brilliant because the blocks are very good. But obviously, I'd have a good range of samples for clients to try on.
Yes.
So it's a pretty foolproof way of keeping the Mark Powell thing going, but in a more practical way.
The name's still moving forward.
Yeah, that's right, and you ain't got to worry about having a tailor over there to make the suits or anything else. So the made-to-measure route is, in fact, I mean, it's no different to a lot of Savile Row. They really got a lot more involved with ready-to-wear, made-to-measure, making themselves a bit more like a brand, because tailoring, the craft is dying.
I suppose the big question, though, to kind of almost finish on, is that it's tempting when you're kind of at our age to start saying it's not like it was in the old days, but do you still see that there's a demand from fellas to wanting to look good, to keep a suit as part of their story?
I mean, I think what I've appreciated more in recent years is things like my coats will be more embraced by a lot of the young guys.
Right.
And girls as well,
Totally.
you know, which are more fashion-led. And that makes sense because it's still a tailored garment. And the funny thing is, when big fashion designers do their collections, it's always the tailoring that defines the mood of the style.
Right.
Whether it be bigger shoulders this season or whatever. So tailoring's always got an important part to keep to fashion. We all know trousers are wide and quite long at the moment, which is all very 90s. It's that 30-year cycle. But I'm always on stuff. I'm always just doing my thing, and I'm never worried about what fashion's doing, but I know I'm really always on point. I'm normally 2 or 3. I'm still that 2 or 3 years ahead, like I was at 30.
It's always style, not fashion. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's that style.
It's all style. Yeah.
Style's got longevity, isn't it?
So 40 years of Mr. Mark Powell, and it's not stopping anytime soon.
Certainly not.
Great news. Obviously, as Mark pointed out, follow me on Instagram. And if you're watching this pre-June, there will be stuff that will be part of the celebrations, won't there?
Of course. And hopefully a big party in 40 date to celebrate.
That's very kind of you to invite us.
Might be. Depends on how good the piece is.
It's close. There you go.
On that case, then.
There you go. 150% of Mark, so thank you very much for your time, and that was Clobbered.